Hi, and welcome to episode number 10 of Slot Leader, where we try to bridge the gap between the world of traditional finance and the world of blockchain technology. I'm your host, Umed Saidov, and in this podcast, we have a special guest from the Cardano community who's trying to build an app that has a real potential with a real use case. So stay tuned. This is going to be a very interesting episode. As always, I would like to remind our viewers and listeners that Slot Leader is an educational podcast, and as such, we do not provide investment, financial, tax, or legal advice. If you are a Cardano stakeholder who would like to support this podcast, you may do so by delegating your stake to our stake pool. Our tickers are Sky and Sky2, and we are very much under the saturation point, which is great for those people who might be thinking about moving their stake before December 1st. As you know, every week I scan the news media landscape for you guys and try to pick one or two stories that I find interesting. And this week we have ABM Crypto, which is a news media outlet for cryptocurrencies, reporting that the CEO of PayPal has said that they will start unrolling the cryptocurrency payments on their network for their 28 million merchants around the world. I think this is a significant event, even though it may not seem like that. But I think it's, if you think about the 28 million merchants scattered all around the world using cryptocurrencies as a method of payment, you can see that there could be an enormous upward pressure and demand for cryptocurrencies. And that's because sending cryptocurrencies or using cryptocurrency networks as a method of payment is much more efficient. And that's basically the hallmark of cryptocurrencies. Even the slowest one, which is Bitcoin, is much faster than sending wires, for instance. So compared to traditional way of sending money, which is more expensive and takes more time, cryptocurrencies are a clear winner in this regard. And that might explain the latest price movement, parabolic price movement in many cryptocurrencies that we've seen in this past week. So that's a news for you. Otherwise, it's been quite quiet in this week, but hopefully we'll see some interesting events next week. The biggest news in the Cardano community came out of the recent AMA by Charles Hoskinson, where he casually mentioned that we will have multi-asset ledger capabilities in Cardano as soon as February 2021. This is a significant event because multi-asset ledgers means that more than one token can exist in Cardano's ledger, and it actually makes it very easy for other tokens to migrate and build on Cardano. And if you think about smart contract capabilities in Ethereum, for instance, the smart contract governs the way that the token is transferred from one address to another. In Cardano, that is not necessary. There is a script that governs its supply mechanism, its monetary policy, and that's it. In terms of ledger being able to send it and receive it, all of that is natively supported by the ledger itself. So we don't need smart contract capabilities in order to have tokens on Cardano, and that will probably open up the floodgates for every single developer out there who's been thinking about bringing his or her tokens onto the Cardano's ecosystem. I would like to introduce you to our special guest today. His name is Mark Stopka. He's a developer and a person who's been very actively involved in the Cardano community. Some might find him a little bit controversial because of his very open way of communicating with people. And but nevertheless, he's had quite an interesting idea of creating a DCloud, which is a decentralized cloud service that would run ultimately on Cardano. In this special interview, we talk about his project and his experience in as a consultant, an IT consultant with financial institutions, and how he sees the integration of blockchain with the financial backend of banks when that happens eventually. So stay tuned. This is a great interview with him, and we covered a lot of interesting questions.
Thank you for inviting me and for having giving me the opportunity to have this discussion with you about my proposal for idea scale or catalyst about the DCloud and about the possible applications of blockchain in the enterprise industry, both permissioned and non-permissioned ledgers.
Perfect. For those of for our viewers that may not be in the Cardano ecosystem, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
I have around 11 years of professional IT experience with another maybe 7 years of, let's say, amateur experience. When I studied, I contributed to a lot of different open source projects. So I built my background there. I started working for my first job was for a Finnish company called Tieto, which is one of the largest European service providers. And the funny thing is that the company was founded as a joint venture between Finnish banks and Finnish government to procure and maintain the first Finnish mainframe computer back in the 70s.
Perfect.
After that, I moved to various enterprise hardware providers, vendors, and I got the opportunity to work with largest enterprises around the world, including financial institutions, insurance, pharmaceutical companies, logistics, you name it.
You have an impressive background. I need to ask you this: why are you in crypto, and why Cardano?
I chose Cardano because I like the scientific method that it has built its foundation on, and I joined crypto very early on, just as an experiment, just for fun. Then I forgot totally about it, and then I woke up in 2017, and I was like, wow, this industry has really changed. And I became active in the community, and I started looking for project past Bitcoin, and that's where I stumbled upon Cardano and joined the ecosystem because I see the possibilities that this technology can bring to the transformation of society. And if you notice that the global trend is globalization, the global trend is growth of population, increase of population density, and so on and so forth. So we need to develop the tools that will enable us to function as a society without that much friction that the current systems provide. More efficient means of communication, more efficient means of trade, lower barrier to entries into certain industries, and so on and so forth.
Now, the Cardano ecosystem has a treasury, and as far as I know, you applied to fund your project, which is called DCloud. Can you tell us a little bit about DCloud?
Yeah, so DCloud is a proposal that I made, and the idea behind it is that currently you look at enterprises and they transition lots of their IT workloads from on-premise, their own data centers, into data centers provided by a third party. But the market and the barrier to entry to become a cloud service provider is so high that we may have like five players who play the major league and maybe five other who play like the second league. And I see this as a major threat to free society, democracy, and so on and so forth. When you look at companies like Facebook with deplatforming, Google, YouTube deplatforming, especially in this COVID crisis, we've seen a lot of deplatforming with the presidential elections. We've seen some censorship here and there, and so on and so forth. So the idea behind DCloud is that We could do it in a decentralized, distributed way when we leverage blockchain and skills of lots of let's say IT enthusiasts to build a platform as solid as the one that is provided by Amazon, Google, and so forth, and so on and so forth. While at the same time not having a central authority that has the power to remove your YouTube video or censor your tweet and so on.
Now, this begs a couple of questions. The first one is that I am a user. I'm an end user. How does that affect me? What kind of benefits do I get from DCloud that I wouldn't be able to get from Amazon's and apart from censorship? Let's say just from a purely sort of utilitarian perspective. Do I
So
have anything? Do I get anything?
yeah, from Italian perspective, what you would get is a lower price as an end consumer. We can provide you with the same services that Apple provides you with that Google provides you with, that Amazon provides you with, but they work with margins between 40 to 80% depending on the service. If we distribute it, you can obviously see that the margins are big enough to split them in half and still make a lot of IT enthusiasts happy with the money they are making from by providing those services, and the end users can save a significant amount of money on their Spotify subscription, Netflix subscription, and so on.
Oh, perfect. Now, the second question I had was with regards to being compliant with legal requirements. Let's say, with the Amazons of the world and the Googles of the world, the fact that companies control these services, they will be able to take down illicit, incorrect, or not incorrect, but illicit
Yeah.
activities or illicit images and whatnot. Will we have the same kind of protections there? And is
So
it be
there won't
compliant?
be there won't be this well, everything will be encrypted, so it's implicit that this level of control, let's say, will not be possible. But I'm working with a partner who actually is working on a platform that would be built on the foundation of the cloud for user content, and they are looking into very interesting ways of user curation and reputation based systems. And you can look even at Reddit, and you have this notion of karma and so on and so forth. And what you need to establish is some form of a strong digital identity. So if you earn bad karma, it won't be cheap for you to come back and pretending as that you are somebody else. So it really comes in the end to being able to identify the originator of the content and tied to his digital identity, which may not be which we may not be able to tie to his physical identity. So we may not be able to throw that particular malicious actor into prison, but we may prevent him from further illicit activities.
Now, the notion of digital identity is a fascinating one, and I've been thinking about that a lot. And one of the things that kind of fascinates me about digital identity is that you don't even have to have you don't have to link it to your physical identity,
Yeah,
as long as it has assets attached to it. We're talking about if you are a somebody who has digital identity, and you work really hard to build your credit score, for instance, you
yeah,
you would
that's
think 5 times more to create another one, or to ruin that one. And the process of getting the second one should be hard. So that you couldn't have like a bad umed and a good umed kind of thing,
yeah,
things like that.
yeah.
How do you solve that problem, that dilemma? Because that's one of the things that I struggle with. Why wouldn't I have 5 digital identities to begin with, and then I could have different spectrum of behavior online based on whatever I want to be that day?
Yeah, well, so There is a concept that has been crafted by a PGP but never took off, and it was a concept of social networks, right? Every single one of us has, like, I don't know how it's for you, but for me, maybe 20 close friends who he trusts, and they have their karma or their assets, their credit score and all that attached to that. And if you build a social graph by signing identity of different people by your friends who trust you, if you create 5 different identities, well, I bet that Umed the Good won't sign 5 identities of Mark Bad.
I see.
You may
Yeah.
sign one, but it is an area to explore and to experiment and to research. It's definitely not something that I would make a claim I have solved. I have ideas there. I speak with a lot of people who have ideas around that as well. And as DeFi grows, you mentioned credit score. That would be exactly something that you would want it to consolidate to one identity, as opposed to having it spread across multiple identities, because let's be honest, when you look at this credit score, the benefits of every single good point on your credit score, it's not linear. It's growing faster than linearly. So you would lose a lot by having multiple. I could imagine for myself having 2 identities, but not 5.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, the solution of involving other people, I think, is an interesting one, at least because I can see that creates friction, at least for Facebook. Because I if there was a second Facebook, I wouldn't go there because I don't have my friends there, right? So it just becomes like a reputational sort of, or the network. Your network is right there, and you can't, unless these people single-handedly basically decide to move into another platform. There's no utility for you to go and do it in a different place, unless you started the whole thing with 2 different identities and build it from there, from the beginning.
Yeah,
But most of us, I think, would struggle to keep one identity actually in.
yeah.
So yeah, that's great. So if I understood it correctly, so the DCloud brings in the same benefits as your average cloud service, and it would be cheaper because it will run on a decentralized network. And how does
Where
that?
there would be greater competition, right?
Mhm.
We currently live in a world of, when it comes to cloud services, in an oligopoly of 3 major players, 2 major players for corporates that makes the major league, as I said, of 5, and then we have these 5 other niche players. In the dCloud environment, while there would be just one dCloud, there would be a marketplace of service providers who would compete with one another for their margins, for their profitability, for their reputation. If you ever heard the concept of service level agreements,
Mhm.
so there would I would also introduce, we also plan to introduce the service level agreements concept later on, as the platform grows and gains adoption. But that's really something that we would be looking at when we would start looking at that enterprise use as well.
Yes. So, for Cardano, how does your project benefit Cardano? I remember you mentioned that you will run on the native token, which is ADA. So, naturally, I'm assuming it will create demand for ADA. Is that right?
Yeah. First, the plan is for it to be a decentralized autonomous organization. The entire structure of the DAO would be running on Cardano as a mainnet, as a smart contract or series of smart contracts. So that brings transactions, because every time we vote on something, we need to decide something, whatever. That would be a transaction on Cardano network. In addition to that, we wouldn't be inventing our own payment token. We would be using ADA and and once there is a stable coin, the let's say native stable coin of Cardano.
Okay.
So that would increase demand for that and for the network.
So that
In
brings me to a question about. So I'm sorry if I cut you off, but I think it's important to realize what um, the governance structure is going to be. Is there going to be a bunch of people who will decide on this? Is it going to be a DAO that will allow anybody to become part of the organization and vote on these issues that will be important for this for these series of contracts? And how would you scale that voting? Is it going to be by the number of ADA you hold, or who's going to do
so
those
so
things?
so, so we will have our own governance token, which will be a native asset on Cardano.
Okay.
And the way to get that token is either by contributing to the project, by uh, doing research, writing code, being a service provider, and maybe in the future by being also a customer.
Okay, so that basically takes care of the Genesis distribution. Is that right?
Basically, already people who contributed, we have a closed repository on GitHub, and we already have some Genesis distribution. And let me be honest, I wasn't very generous to myself.
Okay. Well, that's a hallmark of a humble leader, I guess. Huh?
Well, basically, the number two has about 1,000 token less than I have.
Okay. Okay. No, that's interesting. I mean, it just basically wanted to get a sense of how the governance would work here, and if I am a corporation, I want to build something on it. I would like to know who makes the decisions. That
Yeah,
would be
it's
important.
it's 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 definitely something that we won't get right from day one. But we will be scaling the DAO proportionally with the network growth and so on and so forth. While in at the same time, Project Catalyst is going on, and they will be doing series of experiments. We will be doing series of experiments. We then can consolidate all that knowledge and outputs from those experiments and take a bunch of behavioral economists, game theorists, and go to the drawing board and really look into that, because there is a thing. We If we look at providing services to to end consumers like yourself or myself, we are looking at a time frame of 6 months. Really having a minimum viable product in 6 months, that would be an equivalent of Google Drive, OneDrive, iCloud. When we look at the actual enterprise use, and by that I mean replacing Office 365 that corporations are using now, that's we are looking at a time scale of 5 to 10 years. So there will be plenty of time to transition from this messy DAO into very well crafted, tested, and resilient decentralized autonomous organization that enterprises can trust.
I see. How does the DAO make its money in order to? Do you have a plan to be self-sustainable? Or how is it going
Yes,
to
there is a
generate?
plan. There's a plan to be self-sustainable. I would like it to be within 2 years, and basically we will charge the part of the fees that the consumers pay to the service providers, and place it into the DAO. And instead of those 20%, the service provider gets those governance tokens. So then he gains the power to decide what will happen with that money. And if his proposal will be, well, give me the money, I cannot imagine many other people voting the same way.
I see. I see. Perfect. Now I want to change gears right now. I know that you've been working um, in the intersection of traditional finance and blockchain. Maybe no, you've been working with traditional financial institutions, and I would like to basically cover the two questions here for the remainder of the interview. And the first one is, could you tell us about your experience working with financial institutions as somebody who's been involved in the IT and the back end side of things and the compliance side of things? And tell me if there are, what the opportunities and challenges are when it comes to integration
Yeah. So
integration with a blockchain. And the second question is going to be about enterprise blockchain. Do you think it's viable? Where is it going? How can the Cardano ecosystem shape itself in order to grab that value, if there is any value?
yeah. So enterprises look at the blockchain since 2017, so when it hit. Well, there were some who looked into it even before, but then they discovered that if they change their name on the stock exchange to include blockchain, their stocks go up overnight by 200% or whatever the case was.
I
But the
remember that.
serious but the serious enterprises started looking into how they could leverage that. And currently there is a big elephant in the room in the finance industry called SEPA, which is a single European settlement system for transactions. There is SWIFT, which is expensive to run. So these are applications which banks really like. I would say, always there is this blockchain, but not crypto. And
Yeah.
for financial institutions, it applies very much. But I even see this narrative changing because there is a common misconception in crypto communities that low interest rates by central banks are gift to the banks. Banks hate low interest rates.
Of
It,
course.
it hurts their margins. It basically puts them out of business. So I can now even see some bankers talking about, what, it would be better if we went to the Bitcoin standard, because then there would be market rates and not what the politician demanded, like we seen the large drops of interest rates after the COVID hit, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to blockchains itself, they see it they see it as a way to cooperate and set boundaries when working with one another.
Yeah.
And as much as I hate Swift when I need to make an international payment, the banks themselves hate Swift for that, except for those few founding members of Swift who are the ones who take those large margins every time somebody makes the Swift payment. In addition to that, in finance, there is a big regulatory a burden, big regulatory overhead. Blockchain can solve that, not by itself, but blockchain in combination with industries that would not exist without blockchain, like zero knowledge cryptography. It was invented in like 1988 by the founder of Algorand, but nobody cared about it except for a few mathematicians until Zcash came along, and they used zero knowledge snarks to add privacy to cryptocurrency, and now it's a blooming industry that can help us with lots of other things. So combination of zero knowledge cryptography and permissioned and unpermissioned ledgers can really reduce friction. I don't know if you ever been involved in a merger and acquisition transaction, but I've been involved in one that I can make public. I think it was in 2015. GlaxoSmithKline, Eli Lilly, and Novartis were exchanging divisions. I was a consultant for one of these three companies, and you wouldn't believe the amount of paperwork and the burden of proving that the assets that
Are owned.
that should yeah, who owns the asset, where it should be transferred, and so on and so forth. We worked 16-hour days, sometimes 20, with and it wasn't just us, the consultants. We also needed some people from the board to at 3 in the morning, hey, you need to sign this because we need to send it within an hour to the counterparty of this transaction. And this is where blockchain brings the level of transparency, where you simply would do a zero knowledge roll up snark that says these assets belongs to this division, and sign it and hand it over. And instead of a 3-month transition that cost them tens of millions of dollars, the cost could be 1-2 million easily. and you have a reduction in cost by a factor of 10.
Yes. So I mean, I keep thinking about that, and I um, can't quite make the case for an enterprise blockchain because in my mind, if one company owns the blockchain, they own the rights, right? So they can write it, and that takes away from the immutability, which is a selling point of blockchain. Now, and I can see that there might be a use case for consortiums of banks or bunch of companies getting together and saying that, hey, we need this, and something like that exists actually in Wall Street. For instance, every time you buy your shares and sell your shares, some custodian is
There is a centralized a company that facilitates the exchange, and there is a centralized depository of value paper, right?
yes. So every time there is a transaction, you don't record it every time because there's millions of transactions per second these days, right? For
Yeah.
each one share. So what happens is that at every end of the day or at some known interval, all the banks basically send their ledgers, and then this company basically reconciles everything.
Yeah.
I can see a private blockchain for companies like that, for banks, for whoever wants to be in that, it's specific to a business, let's say insurance companies or whoever, that would have these kind of transactions, or need for these kind of transactions to talk to each other, but not have to divulge all the interests. So I mean, that's basically the thing, right? So the reason why the banks decide to give it trust the third party is because they own that party all together,
Yeah.
and there's an arm's length sort of
Yeah.
transactions between them. So but yeah, but beyond that, I think, if you want to take it to the extreme, you want to basically say, I just don't want to deal with the infrastructure at all. I mean, you probably be better off just outsourcing the whole thing to an open blockchain, especially if you are a developing country which has nothing, right? So if you have turnkey solutions for these kind of types of things, then you might have a good use case for platforms like Cardano.
There is a tremendous value in that for as you mentioned, emerging markets like developing nations, be it post-Soviet countries that are not yet members of the EU, or be it African countries or some Southeast Asian countries. Sorry. In addition to that, look at the cooperatives, right? We see a rise of socialism, and at least in the political area, and the idea behind socialism, if you strip it down to the true ideology, and not what all the corruption did with that, is to basically have a cooperative of employees who basically create DAO with some rules where everyone is equal. Well, my DAO, there is not everyone equal. You do more work, you get more tokens, so you get more power. But this is another use case for the public ledgers. But there also is the other side of the coin, where you as a government want to maintain, it's one thing are public speeches that politicians made about everything being transparent, open, and so on, and then there is the reality when they actually want some level of secrecy and privacy, which they could not achieve even if they would be using top-notch cryptography that we have available at this time. And that's where they look to the private ledgers, the permissioned ones. And there is also the notion of adversary. Imagine you are a small African country of 10 million residents and GDP per capita of 5,000 US dollars, and you make angry some big nation state like China. Uh, if it's going to be a public non-permissioned ledger, China could launch an attack that basically cuts you off from the public ledger. because they have that much power, because not by themselves, but they use their political influence over other countries to join them in that joint effort of cutting you off, just like it works with international sanctions and so on and so forth.
Yes,
So
but I have a hard time believing that your public ledger would be more susceptible than a private ledger, because the public ledger, by its definition, is going to be the nodes that run it could be anywhere in the world, and you wouldn't be able to like identify all of them and then start doing DDoS.
yeah, but you could cut off the entire country from the internet, and it happened several times
Yeah,
to
so that's
certain
actually the selling
countries.
point of a public ledger, right? Building on public ledger, because if you
No, because
if all
because
your
if you,
servers are inside, then you wouldn't want to have a
well it it,
because
it
there's
it's
infrastructure choke points. Then you can I can see that.
so first, it's, if we look at it today, and we are exploring the ways of RENA and redesigning the internet architecture, but today, cutting off a country from the internet, they can either do it themselves or somebody else can do it for them, but it's not very hard to do if you are a nation state,
Yeah,
and you can tell your telco provider what to do. So if you have a private permission system running within your country that is connected to other countries, your neighbors and trade partners and so on, the malicious actor could disconnect you from your trade partners, but at least you will be able to facilitate the transactions that you need within your local authority.
I see
On a
what you mean.
public ledger,
Intranet, yes.
with the current design and ways of the internet, they could cut you off even from simply moving money within your own borders.
Yeah,
So
I mean that option stays today, even, right?
yeah.
If that risk isn't something that's going to be pertinent to blockchain in particular,
No, I
it's
mean,
something that is already
how many
existing.
countries got cut off from SWIFT by U.S. sanctions, right?
Yeah. Anyway, Mark, we are hitting our allotted time. It was great talking to you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Stopka. He is an active member in our Cardano community. He runs a pool. His partner runs a pool, Dolka, and it was great having you here. If you have any last words, please do go ahead.
I thank you for inviting me. I think it was great talking to you, and I hope the audience appreciates our discussions, and hopefully see you in some next episode. And I wish you more and more subscribers.
Thank you so much. This marks the end of our episode today. I hope you liked the interview and the type of content that we're putting together. And if you do, please do not forget to subscribe, like, or comment on our videos. It really helps us a lot to build awareness about Slot Leader. I'm your host, Umed Saidov, and I will see you next time.